Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and this is a bit different because, well...
I'm here.
Yeah, we decided to do like a podcast because it's been...
A while, let's just say.
Yeah, and so I'm actually picking up a PlayStation 2 from Amy that I lent her like...
A couple of years ago.
Yes, because we're having, and by we I mean myself and several friends, a gaming night soon, and the PlayStation 2 is going to be involved with some other retro consoles, and my friend's PlayStation 2 doesn't so much do the working at the moment.
Can I just say before we get on to the conversation that it's mildly depressing that the console I grew up with is now retro?
Well, think of it this way, the PS3, when the PS5 gets released next year, will be retro.
Why do you have to say these things? Why do you hurt me so?
Because it gives me amusement.
Fair.
Alright, so anyway, what have you been up to since... Because I haven't actually seen you in person in a long time.
Yeah, we've both been really busy with our own personal stuff. I'm now seeing someone. You're now seeing someone.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, not much really, you know, working, doing the usual. Been playing some cool games lately, a couple of which I did some videos on the channel, hint hint.
Is that your please watch them, please? I'm
Yes.
going to link them in the description of this very video.
Yes, that is.
Okay.
One of them, well actually both of them I'm going to continue playing after I'm done with the video, which is actually quite rare.
Yeah, most of the time when we review something, we're like, well, that was fun, never going to load that again.
Yeah, because there's so many games to play, and yeah. So, the one I'm continuing to play at the moment is Blasphemous. Don't say too much on it, because you can go watch my video, but it's a really cool sort of Metroidvania, 2D Dark Souls-like, which is really cool. And the other one is like a Children of Mortar, which is like an RPG, but kind of has like roguelite elements as well. But the graphics on that are actually stunning. I think you'd like that game a lot. Yeah.
I've been playing Gears of War, or Gears 5, should I
I
say.
thought it's literally called just Gears 5, just like, I don't know why, it just upsets me.
Yeah, I keep saying Gears of War 5, it's because I'm so used to it though, but I don't mind Gears 5.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going to get into the lore reasons as to why that is. I don't want to know.
Well, basically, it's obviously, you know, like it's military based, and basically humanity at this point are just military unless you're one of the, let's say, outsiders that are in the wilderness.
Right.
And so the reason they call them gears, it's like like when you become like part of the gears, you're basically like a cog. So in other words, you're a cog in the war machine against the locust or whatever. That's essentially what the reason is.
Oh, this lore, it's so deep. I can't even...
It's not supposed to be deep. It's supposed like, they even acknowledge the fact that they basically are losing the war.
Right.
And that's why they use the Hammer of Dawn and basically nuke the planet as like a last-ditch effort.
Gotcha.
And that's part of the reason I'm missing out a whole bunch of stuff. But,
yeah, a bunch of gears then. The comments like, well, actually...
you know, you actually should read the books. They're really good.
I need to play the games.
You really should, but you definitely like, because the one, I think it's Aspo Fields, is set before the first book. Sorry, before the first game, excuse me.
Yeah, I know what you meant.
But the funny thing is that we actually just got a code from Microsoft with Gears 5, and I've been doing all of my testing and everything on the Game Pass version, and Microsoft were like, here's the code. Yeah. I was like, hey, you know what would have been great if I'd have gotten that earlier, so I could have done like a preview version, but
yeah,
fine.
that would have been nice, but hey, we got it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, although it's kind of cool, because we didn't even ask
No, we didn't even ask, it was just like, open my emails, and it was like, here you go, here's Gears 5. And I'm like, oh, that's going to make Paul very happy.
Yes, it makes me smile. But anyway, other than that, shall we get on with the stuff that's happened over the last week? Because, geez, this has been a crazy week in technology.
Yeah, it's been one of those weeks. Like, we had a bit of a quiet period for a couple of weeks, about a week or so, roughly. And now it's just like, things are kicking off again because we're approaching things. So...
let's try and keep everything AMD related, Intel related, and Nvidia related, because
let's do it. Let's keep it neat and tidy.
Okay, let's start with what I think's a really cool CPU actually.
Okay.
The 3500X.
Okay.
So the reason I think that this is going to be a really nice processor is going to be around 150. Well, the rumors is around $150. Which is around $50 cheaper than the 3600.
Yeah.
But it's going to still have 6 processor cores, although it's not got SMT. So it's only going to have 6 cores, 6 threads, and it's looking to be a really nice CPU. I think it's going to be perfect for someone who wants to pair it with like a cheap GPU, like an RTX 2060 at most would be the perfect GPU for this, probably.
Right.
But for budget gamers, if you're putting it like with an RX 580 or something, I think it's going to be a really nice processor.
Do you think the lack of SMT would be like worth the cost save, I guess?
If you're only doing gaming, I'm actually doing tests at the moment. I've been, as you know, driving myself crazy as I slowly get through this SMT and core count scaling video.
Yeah, you've been working on this for like 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, it's because games are coming out all the time that are new. Like, they've just had the Surge 2 release, so I'm like, do I include the Surge 2? Do I?
No.
I think I will. So now I've got like Resident Evil 2, the Surge 2, Gears of War, and I'm also going across APIs as well as core count. So I've got DirectX 11 as well as DirectX 12 and DX and Vulkan if necessary. So basically, my tests so far though for a lot of games, you're like almost always GPU bound. I mean, obviously, if you're running something like, I don't know, an RTX 2080 Ti on I don't know, like a 1600X at 1080p, okay, that might be a bit of a different story.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, even even with only 4 CPU cores on most games, when you're running at like 4K, the RTX 2080 Ti, even overclocked, actually is basically GPU bound on pretty much all of them. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Resident Evil 2, blah blah blah. Quite frequently you're GPU bound. So I think this is going to be a really nice CPU.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds it, and you can't really argue with the price.
No.
And the sort of performance you'd get with it as well. That's a good starter build, I think, for a lot of people.
I think it's going to be a really nice starter build. Although you covered a piece of news with the 3950X, speaking of speeds.
Yeah, so go and watch my video yesterday if you excuse me, if you haven't already. But I'll kind of give you the TLDR. Essentially, as you probably heard, AMD delayed the 3950X by a couple of months. It was initially supposed to come out this month. It's now coming out in November. Obviously, we don't know when in November, so it could be 1 month, 1 month and a half, 2 months, whatever. Regardless, it's delayed, is the point. And they basically said that it was due to demand, and obviously you yourself speculated that it would be due to the fact that TSMC are having issues meeting up the demand of 7nm.
Mm-hmm.
So then someone else came out and said, and go and watch my video for the sources for this, because I can't remember off the top of my head, but someone said that it was due to the fact that they had quote-unquote unsatisfactory clock speeds. So basically they didn't have enough CCXs getting to the proper clock speed to actually, make it a 3950X worthy.
Well, I think it's a combination of the both. So I haven't read that story yet because I've been so busy with other stuff.
Well, I mean, I basically just told you the key points.
But one of the things I will say. So basically, I heard that Rome is taking up the highest quality silicon, and like Threadripper and Ryzen are basically getting, I wouldn't say the scraps, but the lower quality bin silicon.
Yeah.
So the higher the quality of the silicon, as in, the CPU cores basically, or in this case the CCXs, the higher clock, they can run at higher clock frequencies without consuming as much energy.
Right.
So what I suspect is kind of like that. Plus as well, they are likely getting smacked on the noggin with the TSMC thing as well. So it's probably a combination of both, if I'm totally honest. But I think I wouldn't, I'm okay for them to delay it. Like, I think it's probably going to be a good thing because of the issues with the BIOSes that we've seen. And I would prefer for them to delay it and for the product to be perfect rather than launch early.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not that lengthy of a delay. Say, for example, if it had been delayed till, January next year, just for example, that would obviously be significant. But we're only talking a couple of months. It's not a huge delay. Obviously, it's disappointing. But again, as you say, I would rather they take their time and have enough product to meet their expected demand and have them meet the clock speed, because especially after all that stuff that happened with the clock speeds recently, they do not want a repeat of that with their 16 core first ever 16-core processor. So
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think they should have delayed the original Ryzen 3000 launch.
yeah, I think they would have been wise to do that.
But
Maybe that's why they've decided to do it this time, because they just can't take that hit again.
Yeah, it's not good in terms of PR. But I will say, despite the teething issues, I think AMD are really nailing it at the moment with Ryzen 3000.
Oh no, I will say, like, Ryzen is absolutely killing it, and deservedly so.
So, we're going to talk about the PlayStation for a little bit, because there's a couple of very interesting PlayStation bits of news.
Yeah.
The first of which is energy efficiency, and the second of which is Zenji Nishikami, I think his name is. I probably pronounced that wrong. But essentially he said that from when he was at a trade show, they've told him that sources have told him that the PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be launching simultaneous to the PS5 base.
Yeah. And that's very interesting, because the most important question in my mind is, would Sony do that?
Well, I am. Hopefully it's going to be up tomorrow, but I've been working on a really lengthy analysis with the PS5 Pro.
Yeah.
So basically, during the time of when I'm running the normal benchmarks, where I don't have to manually do the gameplay, that's when I've been video editing the PS5 Pro thing.
Right. Efficiency.
Yeah. Why not, right?
Yeah.
So I've been doing quite an in-depth analysis of that, and I personally am somewhat skeptical that they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think they could, in terms of, like, they'd have the capability, but would they
disagree.
actually do it? I mean, I just don't know if they'd split their market like that, and I feel like
there's three issues I've got with it.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, if I can finish my thought, like, there's the other reason why they waited 3 years for the PS4 Pro is because it gave them the time they needed to, you know, make improvements to the hardware while also making sure that PS4 games could still run on the Pro and vice versa, blah 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 blah. So I feel like that time is kind of needed.
Well, I've got 3 issues with it.
Okay.
So the first issue is, we think that we've seen the PS5 APU in the wild.
Yes.
Right? The problem is, though, that if that APU is really the PS5, and no one knows 100%, Tim Apisak thinks that it is, but we're not 100%.
Yeah.
So the fact is, if Oberon really is the PS5 APU, it has 8 Zen 2 CPU cores, which is looking quite accurate.
Yeah.
And the GPU clock is 1800 megahertz, which is really fast.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you do the die size, if you look at the die size of a Nave 10 GPU, it's 251 squared.
Okay.
The Zen 2 CCX for 8 CPU cores is 74 squared. This is all from memory, so I might be slightly off.
Okay.
And that's not including the I/O die, and that's all going to be on a big ass APU.
Okay.
Right, so that's a technical term. It's a big ass APU.
Yeah, very technical.
So my issue is that's, you know, essentially around 350-ish squared. I'm assuming that there's going to be a bit of extra stuff on there because it's a custom APU, which is essentially the same size as the Xbox One X's APU. My point is that I'm a bit skeptical that they're going to then make it bigger still for a PS5 Pro. And the other issue is that supposedly Microsoft were working on a lower powered variant as well.
Yeah.
And then now they're only working on the streaming system, and they're working on, obviously, Anaconda, which is the high-end system.
Yeah.
But from what I heard through people, they've said that basically Microsoft were told, kind of hush-hush, that, yeah, if you release 2 consoles at launch, this is a new console generation, we don't have the engineering resources to learn the ins and outs of both consoles, so we're just going to target to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other issue as well, and this one's really simple, let's say they release the PS5 and the PS5 Pro.
Yeah.
How in 3 years' time are they going to release a PS5 Super Pro?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I feel like that breathing room for the PS5 to do its thing, get the launch pains out of the way, as they inevitably are going to happen. They've happened basically every generation ever, essentially. You know, and then obviously the developers have got time to get used to the architecture of the system, its quirks, whatever, and Sony have got time for to make some more research and development advancements. Maybe a new tech will come out. We don't know what's going to happen. Is my point. So I just feel like that extra 3 years or whatever. Not saying it'll be 3 years again, but I'd say around that margin is a fairly reasonable assumption. Is kind of vital on both ends.
I will say though, in my video, I also do explore the potential of like die shrinks as well as ray tracing and lots of other stuff. So I go much deeper.
Obviously, we're just talking in like the cliff notes here. So obviously, when you do eventually get to your video, they'll be much more in depth.
I will. And here's a quite interesting one as well. Intel have been doing some very cool stuff recently. It doesn't help them now with the 3950X coming.
Yes.
But there was a couple of very interesting things with Intel. So one actually I found quite funny, and that's actually to do with World of Tanks, which I've no interest in at all.
Yeah.
I've never played it, but I might actually load it up just to test out one of the technologies that they're sporting.
This was rather interesting.
One API.
Yes.
And software or ray tracing using the One API. I'm actually looking to get an interview at the moment with the developers, so I'm kind of like nudging them, and they said that it's a possibility, which would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But it's quite... it makes me wonder a couple of things, because it's also agnostic, so it's irrelevant of whether you've got an AMD GPU, so you could have a GTX 1060 in there, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not behind any particular hardware.
Exactly, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's not... and people will rightly point out in the comments that it's not as advanced by any stretch of the imagination as what RTX is capable of.
No.
But basically, it's only for things that are directly...
That was it.
It's only directly in sunlight. And also, I believe... and I could be wrong on this because this is from memory, but it's only for vehicles that are active. So if you blow something up, it's no longer going to be putting the ray tracing on that.
Yeah, so obviously it's not as advanced as what NVIDIA have with Turing.
No, but then again, I think it's really cool potentially what they could be doing. And it makes me wonder as well what XE is going to bring to the table. Is that how they're going to be doing it on XE for the short term? Or is it not? Or is it going to be hardware traced?
I mean, it might be a mixture of both, to be honest. I mean, I think a mixture of both would be smart.
Maybe.
And I think that would make sense for Intel to do with XE. Obviously, software ray tracing and hardware ray tracing is an interesting combination.
But there is also something else Intel did. Did you see about Willow Cove? Okay, so I think with Willow Cove, obviously we've had Skylake for like 500 years.
It feels like that. It feels like that.
So we've had Skylake for some time, and to be fair, it's pretty impressive what they've squeezed out of 14nm.
I mean, like 14nm, like
plus.
It's earned its nice, comfy retirement in the old folks' home with slippers and a pipe. It's been put through the ringer at this point.
The fact is, though, that I think Comet Lake is going to be really impressive for gaming.
Yeah.
I think Skylake as an architecture, though, I think there's a very good chance that let me rephrase. I think it's very good that they're coming to an end with Skylake. I think they've kind of squeezed everything they can out of it.
Yes.
Although it's very telling that it's taken so much for AMD to actually compete with what they did with Skylake.
Yeah, to be fair, it has taken, basically 2.5, if you want, generations of Ryzen to get Intel to wake up and be like, oh, all right then.
But the interesting thing is, I think the next year or two in CPUs is going to be amazing, whether you're an AMD or an Intel supporter.
Yeah.
Because, so the next generation, well, technically the current generation of CPUs that Intel are working on is obviously Sunny Cove, which has around 14 to 18% IPC gain.
Yeah.
Although its clock frequency has been somewhat lackluster. But in terms of architecture, it's really pretty decent.
Yeah, no, it is looking interesting.
Now, I got told through the grapevine, with a pretty good source, that Zen 3 is going to be quite equivalent in terms of energy efficiency and performance versus Intel Sunny Cove. So those two are basically going to be kind of a wash, roughly at the same energy efficiency. And the funny thing is, AMD then confirmed it in a tech slide.
Yeah.
But Willow Cove is obviously the successor after that. It's the next generation architecture after Sunny Cove.
Yes.
So Willow Cove, Jim Keller basically said that Willow Cove, they're pushing back onto the performance metrics, that they're basically getting back on track with the target performance that they wanted to. And he basically is an advocate that Moore's Law is not dead. Yeah. He thinks that people are wrong when they say that, and he said that they're getting back on target with Moore's Law. And from what the little bit he revealed, I think Willow Cove is going to be quite monstrous.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I'm happy to see it. Like, Intel had no real reason to innovate or do anything new and interesting because they were just undisputed kings for so long.
Yeah.
And now AMD have woken them up and gone, oh, okay, like we actually have to try now, basically. So, and that's good. That's good for us. Like, you know, AMD have been doing amazing things with Ryzen. You know, Ryzen 3000 is great. The original Ryzen was great. Zen Plus was great. And now what Intel are coming out in the future, Comet Lake's really interesting. Obviously all that stuff about Willow Cove and all the rest of it, that looks really cool. So it is going to be like really cool to see like the sort of back and forth between the two companies, like that this like the race is on sort of thing, and we just get better, more interesting products as a result.
I think that the next couple of years are going to be really interesting, and I think it's also going to be fascinating as well because with Intel jumping into the graphics side of things next year, and you know, I think Nvidia, I think it's kind of funny that Nvidia have been the ones that have been super complacent over the last year with the graphics side of things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like AMD caused Intel were complacent, and then AMD slapped Intel so that they've kind of woken up and they're like, oh yeah, now we actually have to release new products.
Yeah.
And then Nvidia have been, I don't think GeForce RTX 20 was awful, but I think that if they'd have released the super versions at the start, I think people would have complained a lot less.
Yeah, no, I agree, because the super, you know, whichever super you ended up going with, was just better performance for the money that you were paying.
Well, the 2070 Super is essentially the 2080.
Yeah.
Vanilla.
Exactly.
And you know, there's a lot of reports right now that Nvidia are basically going to be doing a major overhaul of the lower-end cards, like the GTX 16 series, because of the lower-end RDNA GPUs.
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to the high end, Nvidia, you know, they have been complacent. Lower end is obviously where AMD are kind of challenging them in that regard. Obviously we don't know what's happening in the future, but it would be interesting if Intel were the ones to kind of wake Nvidia up after themselves being woken up by AMD.
Well, remember the source that I had about Nave 23 is that AMD are calling it the GeForce killer.
Yeah, and it's not like AMD to use words like that.
Well, it is in their marketing department,
but not in statements to the press and things.
No, they'd say that crap to the press, but the reason it's interesting to me is because it was an engineer that said this internally, right. And that's something that, you know, from what I've heard from people who work at AMD, normally they're more boisterous to the marketing than what they are internally. Internally, well, they've got
obviously,
been
you're going to sell yourself in your marketing, so that makes sense.
I don't know if you remember the whole thing of poor Volta from Raja Kodori back in the days of Vega.
Not really, to be honest.
Yeah, so basically, Raja Kodori said poor Volta when they was talking about Vega, and obviously Vega, in terms of power efficiency, was like trying to get a gerbil to like power like the city. It just doesn't work well. It's really, but actually it would be the reverse. It would be like trying to, it just takes so much energy.
Yeah, it was a monster in that regard. Yeah.
Although compute wise, it was really decent.
Oh yeah, Vega gets a lot of heat and kind of deserves a lot of it, but it does have its good points.
It puts out its own heat. That's the bloody problem.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I will say, to Raja, you know, I've kind of heard some stuff for the grapevine that, and I've discussed this on video before, but I have heard that Raja was seriously hamstrung at RTG.
Yeah, I've heard the reports that Vega's money was basically just not there.
Well, the other thing as well you've got to remember is that it had already been largely in design when Raja took over.
Yeah.
So actually, a lot of the stuff that because there was another source I had at GDC. This is back when I said about when I first revealed that Next Generation Nave has ray tracing.
Yeah.
So that source also told me that that Raja's main task at RTG was to fix the issues of GCN, and then basically fix that with RDNA. So RDNA is technically Raja's legacy, a little bit like Jim Keller's legacy at AMD, the short stint he was there, was to design Zen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny now both of them are at
both at Intel, yeah, who've just on an absolute tear, just taking everyone's talent, like, yoink.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at this point they're just gonna start kidnapping people.
Yeah, it's for a while, it was every other week, it was oh, so-and-so has gone over to Intel, and it was a lot of AMD people, but there was a couple from Nvidia as well.
And Tesla.
Sure. Oh yeah, Tesla, yeah.
And Google, I believe. They grabbed some from Google. They grabbed some from Amazon, I think.
Yeah, literally all the talent, they were just gimme, gimme, gimme. And obviously, if Intel turned up your door hey, I'd like to offer you a job on this fat stack of cash, you're not exactly going to be actually, I'm alright, I'm all set.
It would be I have this crippling fear of money and success.
Exactly.
Although it was because, as you know, I went to the GDC thanks to Intel.
Yes.
And it was quite funny because when I was there, I realised just how small their PR and other departments, because they were literally putting it together as they were putting this stuff together, putting the event together.
What do you mean they were putting it together?
Well, I don't want to give away too many details because of obvious reasons. But it's kind of a lot of the positions hadn't been filled yet because the group was so new.
Oh, I see. I'm with you.
So it's they had most the engineers, for example, they didn't have all of the engineers in place, and now obviously that's much more filled. But it was even the marketing department.
They basically have built a graphics department from nothing.
Yeah,
so.
But anyway, I guess getting back to the point of what I was saying, because I've gone on such a tangent now.
It's us. If we don't go on a tangent, is it really us?
True, but getting off the tangent for a moment, I think that Nvidia and AMD competing is great.
Yes.
And I'm happy AMD are competing now in the graphics. And I really hope that we have a high-end GPU from AMD that kicks Nvidia.
Yeah.
But
I want to see that.
It's okay. Let's say you call it per generation a year, right?
Okay.
Just make things easy.
Yes.
But every year, it's very hard for both companies to put out equally good products, which means that, technically speaking, there's always potential that you only really have one company that's going to have a really great product for that year. So what I'm saying is that from my point of view, having 3 potential companies that offering products, there's a very good chance that, Nvidia have screwed up this year. At least you've got AMD and you've got Intel. Or Intel's product's not great. Hey, at least you've got AMD and you've got Nvidia. Whereas otherwise, it's kind of on a buyer's guide, it's kind of at this price point, you can buy the RTX 2070. At this price point, you buy the RTX 2080. At this price point, it's not difficult. It's kind of what's the point in... Yeah, it's just kind of this one, or this one.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I'm hoping that that's going to be a thing, because obviously that's going to be great for us as customers. But, and supposedly, the biggest architecture change ever in Intel's graphics is Generation XE. Well, Generation 12, aka XE. It's way bigger change than 11. And that's according to an engineer that probably shouldn't have said that on a message board from Intel.
Yeah, probably. But no, I'm really interested to see what's going on with XE. I mean, honestly, we know basically nothing about it, and that makes me even more curious. Just
I know some stuff.
Links.
I know some stuff.
Well, yeah, I know we've heard a few bits, but nothing.
There's actually
meaty.
Well, there's a couple of bits from people that posted on Twitter, and then they got snapped up by Intel, and then they deleted the tweets.
Oh, I see.
So basically. Yeah, if you know where you're looking, and I've covered some of the stuff before. So if you want to check out my XE League, although I'm going to be doing a more in-depth one soon.
No, again, I know we know a few bits. I don't know. I just want them to tell us exactly what's happening.
From what I'm hearing, it's going to be a chiplet-based design, and it's going to be quite monstrous. But at the end of the day, it's down to the software, it's down to the support, and finally, it's down to whether it's really a good product.
Yeah.
But I think that's just about enough for this tangent.
Yeah, I mean, we're now running over 30 minutes, so we should probably wrap this up.
Well, what can I say? I'm good at stamina.
Indeed. Alright, guys, well, thank you so much for watching, as always.
Yeah, this was probably one of the most unstructured videos that we've actually done.
Yeah, but that's what our podcasts are like. Like, you know, this is not new.
I'm used to structure, damn it. I'm used to things being perfectly in line.
And tidy.
Yeah, I'm kind of shaky because I'm like, I normally have notes and everything else, and now I'm like,
welcome to my world of chaos, Paul.
No, it makes me uncomfortable. This is like, I'd like to point out that my PlayStation 5 thing was originally supposed to be like, oh, short video, if you remember.
Yeah, you said this about the tests that you're doing for the, you know, the call thing.
It could be that the PlayStation got to 3,000 words, and then I realised I needed to add some more stuff. So now it's like 3,500.
Yeah. This man's essays are insane.
On the positive side, though, I've edited it almost. I've only got like a little bit left to do. This new section I've just added.
Oh dear. Yes, I'm going to be leaving you all in his capable hands as I'm away this weekend. So,
where are you going?
I'm going to Swansea, which is in Wales. So.
Well, I guess someone has to go there.
A friend of mine has been asking me to go see him for ages, so I'm going to go see him with the other half, and it should be good because I've never been to Wales before, so it should be fun.
Okay. I think you're the first person to say go to Wales and have fun in the same sentence.
We'll see. We shall see. We're going to go to a gig. It's going to be good.
Okay, then.
Alright. On that note, guys, thank you again for watching.
Yes, especially if you managed to sit through this last bit.
Yes, well done. You get a cookie.
Yes, you can get 2 cookies. Don't be mean. Alright.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye.